Hey there, everyone. Welcome to our breakdown of UFC 289, Nunes versus Aldana, coming this weekend live from Vancouver, Canada, in the UFC's return north of the border. We got a pretty good card here, headlined, of course, by the Bantamweight Championship, Amanda Nunes, looking to defend her title against Irene Aldana. Nick, thanks for joining me tonight. What are you looking forward to on this card?
Yeah, I mean, we got a few really good fights. Obviously, Oliveira versus Dariush as the co-main event, probably maybe the people's main event. It's always good to see Nunez defend her belt. I think she should have a fairly easy time here. We're about to get into that, but I don't know. I hear a lot of people complaining that for a pay-per-view, maybe this isn't the deepest card, and I don't know that they're wrong, but I will say there's a lot of fun fights here. We also have Ige versus Landwehr, certainly to be a good one. Imavov Curtis should be a banger as well. So a lot to look forward to. Only 11 fights, so a smaller card as well, but I don't know. I'm happy any week we have fights, so you know I'm easy to please.
Yeah, absolutely. Main card really, came out solid. I'm pretty excited about it too. And, with all the awesome pay-per-views we have coming the rest of the summer, the rest of the year, this may be the worst we see for a while, and it's still pretty solid. So we'll dive into the fights here. Main card, of course, starting at 10 p.m., headlined by the Bantamweight Championship. Amanda Nunes currently a minus 325 favorite against Aldana here. We were originally slated to see Juliana Pena, the trilogy fight with Amanda Nunes here. Pena withdrawing, Aldana stepping in. I think this is a pretty compelling fight. I think Aldana is, a better overall fighter than Juliana Pena. And Nunes has sort of echoed that this week as well. She sort of knows what she's up against, and it should be an exciting fight. Aldana, aggressive, good boxing, really crisp hands. She's going to probably be looking to strike here with Nunes, keeping the distance if she can. Nunes is going to want to avoid, getting into a brawl here, as she sometimes tends to. But she looked good the last time out, defending or getting her belt back against Pena. Really just an overall solid performance, couple knockdowns. Clearly, she's still in it. She still has the power. There's questions where her head's at, how close Nunes may be to retirement at this point in her career. But I think this is a fight that, yeah, she should have a lot of perceived advantages. Grappling, I think, is a bit of a hole for Irene Aldana. And if Nunes elects to take her down or utilize her wrestling, she's going to look the part of a minus 325 favorite. In a striking affair, Aldana should have her moments. Like, she really does have good hands. I could see her tagging Nunes a couple times. It's just if there's going to be prolonged exchanges in the pocket, things like that. Nunes has the power that separates her from all these girls at 135. We've seen it on display before. So yeah, I see it being a bit of a back and forth, but Nunes ultimately putting in the better minutes, landing the cleaner strikes, and getting her hand raised. I'd love to see her wrestle and win this fight perhaps by submission, but I'm not sure if that's exactly the game plan she's going to look to execute here this weekend. But I think it's still Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm almost more confident in Nunez, I think, than even you are. I mean, a lot of people are giving Aldana a lot of credit this week, and I mean, she is a good striker. She's going to be able to hang in the pocket, but other than that, I think Nunez has her beat everywhere. I think Alexa Grasso winning the title over Valentina has kind of like seeped into people's minds for this matchup, but it's a totally different fight. I mean, Nunez still very much in her prime. She's going to have a dramatic grappling advantage here. We saw Aldana taken down multiple times against Santos, even against Holm, against Macy Chiasson, who no one really considers a grappler. So really, in this fight, I think, like you said, the clearest path for Nunez is certainly to take it to the mat. Even if she doesn't, though, as good as Aldana is in terms of her striking offensively, she actually has a negative striking differential. She absorbs 5.7 strikes per minute, where she's landing 5.4. I know a lot of those numbers are skewed towards the earlier part of her career. She certainly improved on that, but Nunez lands almost two more than she absorbs per minute. So I think on the feet, it's going to be close. I'd still give the edge to Nunez. Aldana certainly has enough power to maybe keep things close. But I don't know. It's just a strange narrative here, and a lot of people want to talk like Nunez is this old vet about to retire, and maybe she is starting to think about retirement. But Aldana is actually older than Amanda Nunez. This isn't one old vet on the way out against some young up and comer. Certainly, Amanda's taken more damage throughout her career, but she's also been tested more extensively against top level competition. I mean, I had a lot of money on Aldana when she took on Macy Chiesa on that last fight, and I was biting my lip. I was pretty terrified that whole fight. She did catch her with that up kick KO to the liver, which seemed a little fluky. I mean, I was certainly happy about it, but I mean, rewatching that fight, it was a lot closer than I think it should have been. Really don't rate Chiesa on all that well at this point in her career. And then the fight with Santos was really back and forth. And wasn't Santos pregnant during that fight? I mean, Aldana deserves credit. She's good, but I think she's getting a little bit of extra glow just because she's teammates with Alexa Grasso, who was able to beat Valentina. And this is just a very different fight to me. I think Nunez rolls here as long as she's herself. She should know better than to just stand in the pocket and trade. I think she learned that lesson in the first fight against Pena. I like her to get it done probably inside the distance. I mean, Aldana's tough, but I don't know. Every advantage for me is in Nunez's corner here, especially with the grappling and averaging nearly 3 takedowns per 15 minutes in a 5-round fight. I'd be shocked if she didn't lean on that part of her game here, at least a little bit, or at least enough to get maybe the finish inside the distance. So I like Nunez here. I'll be tying her into parlays. You can certainly hedge out as this is the last fight on the card. Just put a little money on Aldana if you get there. But I'll probably bet on her inside the distance as well. I know at times it doesn't always work out. She likes to play with her food, but this is the type of matchup where I think she has dramatic advantages on the mat. So I'm all over Nunez here. Should be a fun fight while it's on the feet, but I'd be pretty shocked if she didn't really lean into that grappling here. It's just such a clear path. It'd really be baffling if she didn't. I mean, the thing with Pena, like Pena caught her on the feet, but Pena, very good jiu-jitsu player, and Aldana is nowhere near the jiu-jitsu of Pena, so I really do like Nunez here. I think she should get it done convincingly.
Yeah, I mean, and Aldana, that last fight against Jason really wasn't that impressive. It's like earning a title shot off of that really is it says a lot about this division and the current state of it.
She was supposed to fight Pennington, who's
right.
weighing in as the backup, by the way. Just to touch on that quickly, if Aldana misses weight, she has missed weight in the past, and Pennington does get the nod. I still love Nunez here. I honestly think Pennington could be the tougher matchup just because she's able to stand on the feet, and she could maybe wear on Nunez's gas tank. But I would favor Nunez here over both of them. And yeah, I think Aldana makes weight. Obviously, this is her chance. She's getting the title shot. But just keep in mind, she was supposed to fight Pennington. That was supposed to be a #1 contender fight. Pennington will be weighing in as the backup just in case Aldana does miss weight. So either way, I like Nunez here, and I do like her inside the distance, although sometimes that's not the most profitable spot as she does tend to play with her food.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be playing that. Maybe looking at a sub prop, something like that, but just Nunez and parlays for me. Probably getting involved here, minus 325. Moving on now, the co-main event. This is a very, very good one. You'll want to check out weigh-ins for this as well. Both guys, cutting a lot to make that 155 mark. Obviously, Charles weight misses before. But yeah, this is a banger. Charles Oliveira, plus 125 underdog facing Beneil Dariush in what is likely a title eliminator. Certainly one would think if Beneil does get the nod here, he's going to be next for the champion, next for Islam Makhachev. But yeah, this is going to be an awesome fight. Both guys super well-rounded. Dariush can do everything. Great jiu-jitsu, very solid wrestling, and what we see him do on the feet in the past is very impressive. He's a durable guy. I think that's a huge factor in this fight, facing Charles Oliveira. Just the punishment we've seen Dariush take in the past, go get through. Would likely be key here against Oliveira, who we know at this stage of his career, especially hyper aggressive, gonna get in your face, Muay Thai striking, very explosive attacks on the feet, and then obviously a one hitter when it comes to jiu-jitsu. If he is able to get to the mat, get to your back, the all-time leader in submissions inside of the UFC. So a very compelling fight with Oliveira off a loss. I had been backing him that entire title run prior to it, on an absolute tear. it is just such a tough matchup to feel confident taking him here. I mean, he's been the dog in so many of these times out, but Dariush just matches up very well with him. And again, I'm concerned if Oliveira is not able to get him out of there early, what this fight starts to look like in the latter half of round 2 and, round 3. We've seen Dariush just be steady. He gets caught a bit on the feet, fighting out of that southpaw stance. I could see Oliveira landing some clean shots on him. But again, Dariush's just ability to take shots, return, counter well, makes this very compelling when the fight's on the feet, and equally so on the mat, with Dariush having a wealth of experience grappling as well. I think ADCC previously, and just excellent jiu-jitsu coming out of that camp. I am siding with Charles Oliveira at the time being. I think this is a fight that stays under 2 rounds. The odds would say that at current -170 to finish inside of 2. And that leans to me to Charles Oliveira. I think these two are going to exchange on the feet. And just what we've seen out of Charles lately, his aggressiveness, I think he's going to be able to find that knockdown before Dariush does. Whereas Dariush may be looking to, test the grappling or wear on Charles, as I think he's going to benefit more the later this fight goes. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. I know this is a super tough one. I'm super excited for it, but I think I'm riding with my guy, Charles, here.
Yeah, I'll agree with you in that it's an extremely tough fight to call. Very, very competitive. Could certainly go either way. I'm on the Dariush side. A few reasons. First and foremost, we saw Charles against Islam. When Charles was on that run, pretty much he just goes striking like super aggressively without much concern for defense. If he gets dropped, he just waits on his back because no one wants to play in his guard. He did that against Gaethje, against Chandler, against Poirier. But then when he faced Islam and he got dropped, Islam just jumped right into it. And Dariush is the same type of fighter. I think he has the better wrestling here by a considerable margin. They're both excellent jiu-jitsu players, but I don't think Benny's going to be afraid at all to play in Charles's guard. I think he knows better. And yeah, on the feet, it's going to be very competitive. I do think Charles is the more dangerous striker in terms of like one shot power. But Dariush has statistically the better defense, 58% striking defense compared to Charles's 51. And then there's a few intangibles here I like as well for Dariush. I mean, he's been preparing for this fight for a very long time. This was rescheduled because Charles pulled out due to injury. But during that whole ordeal, I mean, Benny was still in camp training to fight Charles Oliveira, where Oliveira was on the shelf recovering. So I think he's going to be super well prepared here. It's always tough too for champions once they fall to kind of rebuild that momentum. We're seeing that with guys like Kamaru Usman right now, like throughout history. That's just kind of been statistically something to keep an eye on, and I kind of see that spot here for Charles. I do think he's the more potent finisher in this matchup. So if you do think the fight finishes inside the distance, I do favor the Charles side. But I can certainly see Benny winning a decision. Just getting top time, winning minutes on top. And yeah, obviously Charles is content to play off his back. The striking should be very close. I think Benny's super cerebral in the way he goes about things. Charles is outstanding offensively and very dangerous, but Dariush maybe has the highest fight IQ in the entire division, arguably in the UFC. Just a very, very sharp guy. And I think the jiu-jitsu is comparable. I give the striking advantage in terms of power to Charles, defensive to Dariush, the wrestling to Dariush, the intangibles to Dariush. So while it is a very close fight, I'm just checking one or two more boxes for Beneil here. So I'll give him the nod. We're getting him close to pick 'em line. I'm not rushing to the betting window to back him here, but I do think he's the side. The UFC's been waiting to give this guy a title shot. I mean, every fighter in the game, like all the questions this week are like, how great does it feel to know everyone wants you to have a title shot? Fans love Oliveira as well, but I really do think this is Benny's time. He's been preparing for this. He seems very focused. Both these guys do. And just as an aside, I mean, we're recording this on Thursday night. I'm scrolling through Twitter right now. They're showing the press conferences. Charles looks very sucked out, a bit more than usual. I don't want to look too deeply into this, but also if you're watching the UFC embeddeds all week, Charles has been in the sauna, I think, every single episode. So I don't think this is the best weight cut for him. Maybe that's because he's been out for a while. But yeah, I like Benny here. I think they both make weight. I think the fight goes off fine, but I do think Charles might be having a tough cut, which is just another reason to like Beneil. But it's certainly a close fight, and I'm not going to be surprised at all if Charles does pull it off. So I like Benny here, close fight. But I think the intangibles have me kind of siding with the favorite slightly.
Yeah, I mean, The weight cut is always sketchy with Oliveira. He tends to rehydrate well, even when we've seen him have these awful cuts before. But yeah, obviously checking them out on the scales come Friday, and before making a bet on this fight, it's hard I think to lay -150 against Charles, but yeah, this should be a really good one. I'm excited for it. The people's main event, some would say.
Absolutely.
We'll move on now to the featured bout coming at welterweight. Mike Malott here in Canada, a showcase fight for him against Adam Fugit. This feels like Fugit's being brought in to lose here. Clearly the B side in this matchup against Malott, and I think Malott has his work cut out for him. He's going to be he's the grappling coach for Team Alpha Male, a very good grappler, and that's really all that Fugit tends to rely on in his fights. I mean, he has some hands, but he is going to be the one looking to initiate grappling exchanges, and that's not going to work against a jiu-jitsu practitioner like Malott. So I see him having a lot of trouble if he is looking to shoot in, bring this fight to the mat, grapple with Mike Malott. And then on the feet, we've just seen what Mike Malott's capable of. Really fast hands, very aggressive. He's not afraid to go in, throw shots, eat shots. I like his willingness to throw and engage. I don't think he needs to be overly aggressive here against somebody the talent level of Fugit. But yeah, I think Malott has a clear edge. On the feet, I think he's going to touch up Fugit. And then again, when these two hit the mat, get exchanging, I don't see anything in Fugit's jiu-jitsu that makes me think he's going to have the edge over Malott. So I like Malott a ton. -200 odds at current. He may be one of my heavier spots on this card. I see him getting Fugit out of there, likely inside of the distance.
Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe not as confident. Mike Malott's look great, don't get me wrong, and I certainly do think he has the grappling to mostly keep this fight standing where he's going to have advantages. But at the same time, I mean, we really haven't seen a ton out of this guy. We haven't seen him extended. We don't know what the cardio is going to look like if this does go into the second and third round. And listening to Fugit all week, like he's really talking about trying to drag it into deep waters, which I think is his one path to victory is to maybe wearing that cardio a lot. But we don't know. Maybe Malott's cardio is fine. Like we just haven't seen it yet. So I think that's the one question mark for me. But like you said, I mean, Fugit, the wins he has are mostly grappling against inferior grapplers. I mean, coming off that impressive win over Kino Shita, where he was a heavy underdog, similar odds to this fight, I think, maybe even a bigger underdog. He pulled that one off, but Kinoshita showed that he just didn't have the grappling to really keep that fight standing where he wanted it. Malott on the feet, he's going to be the better striker, more powerful, quicker hands, better defensively. It is in his backyard. And listening to interviews of his this week, even before this fight was scheduled, the Canada date was on the calendar, and he just started training camp for this date specifically. So even before the fight was announced, he was preparing to fight on this specific day. He is super focused. He grew up watching fights in this arena apparently, and like this is like his culminating moment of him getting on this stage where he wants to be. And the other thing I think we really need to look at here is the UFC is putting him as the feature fight on a pay-per-view. 3 fights down after the main and co-main. I mean, this just kind of shows the status of where Canadian MMA is right now. Excuse me. I mean, he's probably one of their best prospects. I don't know that I think he's all that great, but I do think they're trying to showcase him here. And Fugit, I mean, he's smart, but like I said, on the feet, he's just not going to have anything for Mallet. Maybe he catches him. We saw that in the Solomon Renfro fight. He ate a ton of shots early and managed to just kind of weather that and put it back on Renfro and pull off that upset, which got him into the UFC. But for me, I'm with you. I think Malott is the side here. The UFC really wants to see him showcased. You can see on their Twitter, they've been posting his highlights and stuff this week. Canada doesn't have a lot of prospects right now. I know Charles Jourdain would have been nice if he could have got on this card, but yeah, Mike Malott's their guy this week, and I think they want to see him win here. They're setting him up to win here. And yeah, Fugit, what he does best is grapple, but Malott has that box checked against him, so I'm with you. I think he's the side. Not quite as confident just because there are some holes on his striking defense as well. I mean, he definitely leaves his chin out there, but I don't know. I think the UFC knows what they're doing with this matchmaking.
Yeah, you said he had the better defense before. I was going to correct you. He leaves his chin there for sure. I think he could get
Yeah,
clipped, but
in
that's
terms of
not really my.
percentage,
Yeah,
yeah, 54% defense for Mallet compared to 46 for Fugit. But the bigger thing, Mallet's only absorbing 3.4 strikes per minute, where Fugit's absorbing 5.9. So Yeah, he's definitely not sound defensively, but comparing him to his opponent here, I do think he has the better defense.
Yeah, and again, with that being the one path, I would say for Fugit, landing something clean, I think Malot's the play for me.
Agreed.
Yeah, we will move on now to a featherweight fight with Dan Ige taking on Nate Landwehr. Dan Ige, a minus 260 favorite here against Landwehr, who can be had for plus 210. Nick, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, you know me. I love Nate the Train. Really fun fighter. Great on the mic. Really entertaining. But yeah, this is just a terrible matchup for him, in my opinion. I think Ige is the much better striker in terms of technical ability. I think we watched that fight Landwehr is coming out of, and he did not look good against Lingo in that first round. That's a major red flag to me. We've seen Landwehr knocked out multiple times in the UFC. So I just think he's running into a just much tougher opponent in Ige here in a fight I expect to primarily take place on the feet. Landwehr, decent wrestler, but Ige should be able to mostly keep this standing where I think he has considerable advantages. We've never seen Ige KO'd. We've seen him go the distance with guys that are top 5 in this division, guys like Korean Zombie, Calvin Cater, et cetera, et cetera. He had a really close fight with Josh Emmett, one that probably could have gone either way. So as much as I like Landwehr, I just do not see any path for him to get this done. I think Ige is going to have enough power to probably win via KO. I think Landwehr is more than willing to engage in a brawl. He is a fan favorite for a reason, but that's not the same reason as, I don't know, it doesn't make him a good fighter necessarily. He is a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but once you get to this level, you're fighting guys that are like borderline top 10 in the division. You really can't have that style. So I like Ige here to probably win via KO. We saw it last time out against Damon Jackson. I actually see this as a similar matchup. If Landwehr has any advantage, it might be on the mat, but I don't think it's wide enough. I actually think Jackson's probably the better jiu-jitsu player compared to Landwehr even, and not playing too much MMA math, but I think it's just more likely than not that Ige probably catches him with something before the end of 3 rounds. So it should be fun while it lasts. I love Nate Landwehr. I'm not going to be upset if he pulls off the upset. But personally, it's just a bad matchup. Ige, very smart with his striking, does a good job using body shots to set up those bigger hooks like he took Damon Jackson out with. And I think that's what we see here.
Yeah, you set it up well. Ige is the better technical striker. I think he does have the edge, there. And, the most likely outcome probably is him catching Landwehr. But I think there is a path for Nate the Train. I am tempted to take him here in this spot. I think that, he's the longer guy. And we've just seen the difference in activity between his fights and Ige's. Landwehr with the cardio latent fights, wearing on guys, winning those back and forth brawls, I think is what he's going to need in order to get his hand raised here today. Ige, again, more technical. If Landwehr can stay in the pocket and survive in the pocket against Ige, I think that's going to be a key here, taking over late in like a back and forth war. And yeah, I mean, you cite the experience for Ige. Obviously, close fights, fights that go 5 rounds against Calvin Cater, against the Korean Zombie. But those are losses for Ige. And there are losses where he looked worse over the course of those 5 rounds. I know this is only a 3-round fight, but I do see this being a one where Landwehr could come away late if he can survive the early clean shots from Dan Ige. So I'm tempted. I'm tempted at the plus 210 odds. I don't see either guy really grappling here. I mean, both have good takedown defense. Landwehr is actually a tick better than that of Ige, but I see these guys largely standing and trading. And if Landwehr can eat shots like we've seen before, we've seen him drop more times than he's been finished. So, he's able to rally back even when he is knocked down. And I think at this number, I may end up riding with Nate the Train here. Again, you're right. Ige's the better hands, better boxer, more technical. But yeah, I just see Landwehr giving him that scrap here and putting on for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I do love Nate the Train, and it wouldn't upset me at all if he won. I don't know. I just think Ige catches him in exchange. I mean, Landwehr, as good as he is, he's definitely there to be hit defensively, absorbing more than 5.5 significant strikes per minute.
I think that's a pretty likely outcome. We also could see a decision win for Ige, but yeah, hopefully going to the scorecards, and I may end up with my money on Nate. You'll want to see come Saturday on Dine Sports our write-up and our official predictions for each of these fights. Opening up the main card, we have middleweights Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Eric Anders in what's a near pick'em fight. Barriault, the favorite at current, minus 130 here in his native Canada. From Quebec, fighting in Vancouver. A pretty interesting matchup. I see Barrial looking to push the pace, as always the case here, against Eric Anders. Using clinch work, pushing him against the fence, striking in close, landing at a higher volume than Anders. That's going to be the key for Barrial, getting his hand raised here, not giving Anders much space to do work because, on the outside, Anders is as powerful as anyone, landing those overhands and actually looking better, more technical in terms of his combinations, as he progresses through his career. He's powerful. He's strong. We've seen some of these wins. Recent win over Kyle Dawkins, very impressive, but he is a bit sloppier than someone like Barrial. He's not as high volume as his opponent. So if this is a fight that goes later, rounds 2, rounds 3 to decision, Barrial's probably going to be the one coming out on top. We've seen his chin touched a couple of times, but I don't think Anders is, the most consistent of fighters in this division. And while these two are awfully similar, I think Barrial has the edge in terms of cardio and overall activity. So I see why he's the slight favorite, and he probably gets the nod for me here.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is one of the tougher fights on the card to call, and honestly, I could see myself switching my pick at some point. But for now, I'm with you. I'm on Barrial. I will say, I think he's never won under the UFC banner for in Canada before, and they've put him on a bunch of those cards. So he's going to break that negative streak, I guess. But like you said, he's going to be the higher volume striker. The thing about Anders is, as gifted as he is physically, doesn't put out a lot of volume, usually waits for fights to come to him. Barrio is certainly the opposite, usually wins the first round, does a good job pushing a pace, really does have solid cardio, and he's usually there late as his opponents start to fade. When you look at these two guys' resumes recently, though, I mean, there's really nothing on either of their records I'm all that impressed with. Like Anders coming off that win over Dawkins, who's been cut from the promotion. Prior to that, his last one was Darren Stewart, cut from the promotion. Then you look at Barrial. I mean, he beat Marquez, who I think was just cut, Jordan Wright. Like, these are guys who are kind of fringe middleweights, for lack of a better word. I do like Barrial here. I think he's going to come in aggressive, kind of wear on Anders, and as long as he doesn't get caught in an exchange or something like that, I do think he should pull this one off. I can see going the distance. I mean, Anders is pretty durable. But yeah, I'm with you. I like Barrial. He lands more than 2.5 significant strikes per minute. And yeah, I don't expect much grappling to go on here. If anyone does try to grapple, it would be Anders. We did see a major hole in Barrial's game against Anthony Hernandez, where he gave up a bunch of takedowns, but I don't really think Anders has the cardio to really execute that type of game plan in this matchup. So I'm on Barrial here, but it's definitely one of my lower confidence plays. It's really tough to trust either of these guys. They're both pretty inconsistent. One more thing on Anders, I don't like how he's been jumping camp to camp. He looked great against Dawkins last time out, fighting at a Fight Ready. He just switched to MMA Lab, and while MMA Lab's another great camp, it's just weird when a guy this late in his career is just going camp to camp to camp. You'd think he'd want to build a little bit of momentum, and he's also talking about retirement. He's like, I have 4 or 5 fights left before I retire. Whenever that's part of the conversation without it being prompted, usually that's a bad sign. So just another reason or two to maybe like Barrial here, but again, not a confident play by any stretch.
Yep, and you said 2.5 significant strikes per minute for Barrial. That's 2.5 more than Eric Anders. His average 5.9, a pretty high clip. So yeah, I see him landing more. I see him winning this fight on volume. All right, now to the preliminary card. The featured prelim, Nasruddin Imavov facing Chris Curtis, minus 155, minus 160 favorite for Imavov at the time being. This was a fight I was having a lot of trouble with. I lean the way of Imavov at current, but it is tough with him having that loss to Sean Strickland, great friend, primary training partner of Chris Curtis, and I could see Curtis winning in a similar style fight. Jab, jab, jab. It's really going to see a lot of jabs from both guys in this spot. Imavov's someone who pumps it out a bunch, and Curtis will likely be looking to work behind it as well, getting inside, getting to the body of Imavov, and then looking to land that big counter, as is often the case in Chris Curtis wins. But yeah, over the course of 15 minutes, I would think Imavov is the more active fighter. This one would think is the larger 30-foot octagon, so he'll have more space to work. That fight style, just like Cyril Gane, right on the feet, bouncing around, jab, great uppercuts he mixes in. A very creative striker, diverse on the feet. And we've also seen some pretty good grappling out of Imavov. I'm not sure he's going to use it here against someone with, better than 80% takedown defense like Chris Curtis. But I'd certainly give him the edge if this fight hits the mat, just given the jiu-jitsu he's showcased in the past. But yeah, this should really be a back and forth on the feet. I think Curtis could land the big counter, could do a lot of good work with his jab. But if Imavov gets off early, fights his fight, stays on the outside, I think he's going to be the one getting his hand raised. But again, very close one, not one I'm super confident picking.
Yeah, I'm totally with you in that this is one of the harder fights in the card to call. Certainly one I could see going either way. Like you mentioned, Strickland coming off, I mean, Imavov coming off that loss to Strickland, who's now doing a podcast with Curtis. They really are like best friends, so that's should be an advantage for him in terms of game planning. Obviously, Eric Nissick in the corner of Chris Curtis. It is funny, Strickland can't quarter Curtis here because he's banned from Canada. I think he has like a felony or something, so he can't go up there. But that shouldn't matter too much. All Sean really does is just like try to hype him up usually when they're in the corner. But we did hear Curtis very, very vocal in the corner of Strickland when he fought Imavov, calling out specific combinations. Definitely saw some gaps in the game. And I think it's telling too that Curtis is taking this fight coming off that Gastelum fight just 2 months ago. He ate that headbutt there, came out really bitter, was pissed off, thought he won the fight. Usually not great to see someone getting back in so soon, but I think there is a level of confidence in taking this matchup. So yeah, it's tough. Imavov, he's better with the kicks. He works well at range, and I think that's the difference for him here. You can't really get in the pocket with Curtis and expect to come out on top. So, going to be a tough fight, and we've actually seen Imavov fade a bit. Even in that win over Buckley, he was starting to gas in that third round, gave that round up to Buckley. Really saw his cardio compromised late in the Strickland fight, albeit that was a 5-rounder. So as this fight gets into the second and third round, I think Curtis could take over. It's just really tough to know if Curtis can really get off his game plan here because we've seen against inferior strikers to Imavov, guys like Jack Hermanson, not really known as the super technical striker, just did a really good job with his footwork, forcing Curtis to cut off the cage. And he had a lot of trouble doing so. So the question is, did Curtis learn from that? Is he going to be able to correct those mistakes this time around? Because this is a very similar matchup, in my opinion, on the feet. But yeah, this is as close as any fight on the card. I guess for now, I'll side with Curtis just to be different than you. But this is one I'm going to spend more time on, and certainly one of my least confident picks, regardless of where I end up.
Yeah, I mean, again, tough one to call. I think Imavov's big too. Like Strickland has the sides to match up with
He
him.
weighed 10.
I don't.
Strickland weighed 10 pounds more than him because that was a catchweight fight too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
I
he's
mean, Curtis a smaller
205
guy here.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, if he gets this fight at distance where he wants it, I think it could be Imavov cruising. But yeah, should be a good one. Women's flyweight next. Miranda Maverick, a -300 favorite, going up against Jasmine Jasudavicius. Canadian here, but tends to win grappling a lot. You know, pretty good jiu-jitsu. You know, and that's really the path to victory in a majority of her fights. And I see that being a problem here, facing someone like Miranda Maverick, who has that wrestling and likely is the superior grappler here in this matchup. We've seen Maverick win 2 fights in a row, combining for 9 total takedowns in those. You know, looking good against Sabina Mazow and Shayna Young. I think that Jasudavicius is going to have a lot of problems on the feet against Maverick, as you know, Maverick is the better striker. Effective out of the southpaw stance, landing with better power than Jasudavicius, and putting together the better combination. So unless Jasudavicius can somehow get her down, get a fluky, I wouldn't say fluky, but get a solid submission attempt on Miranda Maverick, I think it is going to be a long night for her. And again, just what we've seen out of Maverick in terms of her offensive grappling, she likely will have the edge when this fight hits the mat. So one would think she's the one getting her hand raised upon breaking down this fight.
Yeah, I mean, when Jasudavicius is having success, it's usually wrestling against inferior grapplers, and I don't know that that's what she's going to be seeing here against Maverick. I will give her some credit; she is a decent wrestler, that being Jasmine. But like you said, I think Maverick is going to have the advantage there. I do see her as the more powerful striker, more defensively sound. And the other thing too is Jasmine got into the UFC very, very late, almost 35 years old. There's almost a 10-year age gap here, and I know statistically, it's like whenever there's a 10-year age gap. The younger fighter wins like 80% of the time or something like that. But yeah, Maverick here, all the momentum. I think the line is getting a little bit out of hand. But that being said, I think she has her covered no matter where this one goes. Should be the better grappler, should be better in striking exchanges. As long as she's smart, puts out a lot of volume, I think this is her fight to win. And yeah, she's been training at elevation too, which is going to help her cardio. I think that's an advantage for her as well, excuse me. So I'm checking all the boxes for Maverick here. I don't know if the line's getting closer to mid threes to 400. That is a little bit ridiculous for women's MMA, even with someone like Maverick, who I do rate fairly highly. But I do think she's the side here pretty convincingly.
Yeah, hard to get involved at the price. I'm not sure if I'll really end up with much action on this fight, just based on where the number is, and can't really take her inside in the spot. Not something I'm interested in chasing. All right, bantamweights next. Curious to hear your thoughts for Richie Lang against Ayman Zahabi near pick'em fight.
Yeah, this is a very interesting fight in terms of styles. Marichi Lang, definitely the more aggressive fighter, is going to chase the finish. Definitely has a power advantage here. Way more explosive, going to come out aggressive early. But Zahabi, while he's really not all that exciting or fun to watch, he knows how to win fights in terms of like point fighting. He's very smart, very cerebral. And yeah, in a matchup like this against a Richie Lang, if he can really, I don't know, lead on his advantages. 72% striking defense in the UFC. That's definitely an inflated number coming out of that Ricky Tercio fight he had last time out. But that's the type of fighter that could give a Richie Lang trouble. If he's not closing the distance, if he's not finding those huge shots, Zahabi could probably pick him apart at range. He's going to have the better cardio. I don't really rate either of these guys as grapplers. I think this is a fight that mostly takes place on the feet. And yeah, while Richie Lang probably wins the first round, it's not going to surprise me at all if we see Zahabi start to pull away as the slight underdog here in his backyard, fighting in Canada, obviously. So a tough fight to call. Another really close one, in my opinion. Right now, I'm slightly siding with Zahabi just in terms of styles, but Richie Lang, definitely the more potent finisher here. If your book offers that line where like only to win by finish, like I think you go with the Richie Lang. If they have like decision only, like the bet's voided if it's finished, you go with Zahabi. I think those are the two most likely outcomes by far. I think either Richie Lang gets the KO or Zahabi wins a boring decision. And it probably won't be boring in the first round, but I do think he could probably pull away in the second and third. And the judges should be on his side with the fight being in his backyard. So I have a slight lean to Zahabi here, but this is another one I want to spend a little bit more time on. Again, Richie Lang, the more dangerous fighter here, but that doesn't always win you a fight.
Yeah, and I mean Zahabi just like steady, like a pretty consistent fight to fight. He's won 2 in a row, catching twice as an underdog, plus 180 against Tercios and plus 160 the time prior against Draco Rodriguez. Yeah, it really is going to be an interesting striking affair. Richie Lang is going to be, looking to close the distance, put his hands on Zahabi early on. And yeah, it's going to be up to Zahabi utilizing his footwork, landing the cleaner counters and fading away from the power of a Richie Lang. A tough one for me as well. My sight lean was Richie Lang, just landing the more, damaging shots. We've seen Zahabi, drop before, and I think Richie Lang has the power to do so. It is just going to be interesting if he's hyper aggressive, getting in the face of Zahabi early, right away on the front foot, where he could get countered, or if that works to his advantage, just not letting Zahabi, get his distance under control and, fight the fight where he wants at his pace. Landing half the significant strikes that a Richie Lang averages per minute. So I lean Richie Lang. I could see him winning by decision as well. I'm not sure if he finishes Zahabi, but yeah, I would say in a fight that goes 15 minutes, Zahabi is likely the one getting his hand raised. I just think that Richie Lang, with that added bonus to finish inside and, the power we've seen out of him, he's probably the slight lean for me, but certainly not one I'm going to be getting too involved with. Minus 120 at current for Richie Lang, probably not a big bet, or maybe just one for fun that I'll be sprinkling. And the prelim prior to that at featherweight, Blake Builder 8-0-1 facing Kyle Nelson, another Canadian here on this card. I tend to bet against Nelson quite a lot, and it has been profitable for me as he's 1-4-1 in the UFC. He's okay. I mean, he's a guy that can throw a solid overhand. He's big, for the featherweight division. And, he's scrappy in general, but not quite as consistent or talented as Blake Builder, in my opinion. We saw Builder's done in his short time in the UFC thus far, and, look good, higher volume than a guy like Nelson, and, a lot of guys even in this division. Just the amount of output he puts out, pushing a crazy pace if needed. We saw that, on some of his regional fights as well. And, I also like it just in general, his countering ability. I don't know if he's going to have the edge necessarily over Nelson on the feet, but I think he is a smart fighter, someone with high fight IQ, and somebody who will stay out of danger from the Nelson overhand. And then the edge grappling, I would give to Builder as well. I mean, we've seen him, display some solid jiu-jitsu, and I could see him finding a late submission in this spot. That may be the way I play it because I'm not super confident getting involved at minus 240. I just don't rate Nelson that highly. I think this is sort of a fight where we'll see the UFC, Builder, and giving him Nelson here, a fighter that we've seen not really have success thus far at this level. So Builder's the pick for me. I see him getting the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Nelson did better last time out against Doo Ho Choi than I think anyone thought. Both of them coming off long layoffs, though, so I don't want to put too much stock into that. Blake Builder looked really good last time out, striking for 3 rounds against Shane Young at a City Kickboxing. I think this time around, he's going to lean on that grappling. I mean, he's definitely the better BJJ player here. Kyle Nelson, 63% takedown defense isn't terrible, but it's also not great, and I do think Builder's going to have that major advantage. He's got to be careful early, though. Nelson's always dangerous in that first round. I think, like you said, as long as Builder's smart, doesn't get caught in anything stupid, doesn't start brawling for no good reason, I think it's his fight to win or lose. I mean, it's kind of weird that the UFC's maybe trying to build him here against the Canadian on Canadian turf. Feels a little bit backwards, but I really don't think they're trying to build Kyle Nelson at this point in his career. So I'm with you. I like Builder. Technically undefeated. He does have 1 draw on his record coming into this fight. Nelson live for that early KO, but we've never seen Builder put out before. So as long as his chin holds up early, I think he pulls away. Like you said, I like maybe the inside the distance prop. I think the submission prop is also worth looking at depending on the number you can get. But this does feel like Builder's fight. As long as he weathers that early storm from Nelson, he should be fine. I do expect Nelson to be much bigger. Builder pretty small at 145. Nelson definitely big, like you said, cuts a ton of weight. But that usually does affect his cardio. So maybe sprinkle on Builder 3rd round. I think that's another decent prop shot here as well. But I do think Builder gets it done as long as Nelson doesn't catch him early. But yeah, kind of a low-level fight. And I do think they like Builder and they want to build him. No pun intended, but he still has a lot to show. I mean, he's 8-0-1 against kind of mediocre competition. So it's yet to be seen who he really is. But I think we know who Kyle Nelson is, and he's really not all that great.
Yeah. And I agree with you there. I think sub you could get like a plus 240, 250 perhaps for Builder. And yeah, I was gonna say rounds 2 and 3. I probably will be sprinkling as I see him taking over later in this fight as Nelson begins to fade. Moving on, the early prelims, just 2. Again, 11 fight card here. This one coming at flyweight between David Dvorak and Steve Erceg. This is a short notice matchup with Dvorak originally scheduled to fight Matt Schnell here in what would have been a pretty exciting fight. But now Erceg stepping up on short notice. He actually had been preparing for a fight with Clayton Carpenter last month, so he's been in camp. He's been, preparing for a fight. And I think he has a decent shot here against David Dvorak. I mean, Dvorak's lost 2 in a row. Previously, a very, very solid winning streak, but lost him in El Cape, lost him Matos Nicolau, 2 very good fighters. But in the UFC, the wins really aren't that impressive to me. I mean, Silva, Espinoza, Juan Camilo Ronderos. It's kind of difficult to gauge how good he really is. I mean, the performances have been, good. He's clearly very talented, very fast hands. It's just Erceg. This kid could be a problem for Dvorak here in this fight. I think he's got a good right hand, and we've seen him pull off a lot of submission wins thus far as a professional. I'm tempted to, I want to see weigh-ins, but just based on the film I'm seeing, the way he fights, I think he has a decent chance if he is to engage with Dvorak. Maybe landing that big right hand, maybe jumping on a guillotine or, some sort of suicide choke here on short notice. we've seen Dvorak fight out of those before, but I think he does leave himself susceptible with the amount of grappling he tends to employ in his fights. So Usyk is a very live dog in my opinion. I may dig a bit more into this fight before I'm really willing to put my money on him. But these odds have closed. Dvorak was a larger favorite than this earlier in the week. Money has come in on Usyk, and yeah, I think he is a dog you do not want to overlook in this spot. Certainly more live than like last week we had Jim Miller, grab our friend Jesse, and that was not it. It was Jesse Butler, not a good show, not a good showing. Usyk, I think, is on the level of a UFC fighter. We'll see if he can prove it this weekend, but yeah, he may be my big dog here for the card today.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I agree with you that he's a live underdog. I disagree that he's going to have much for Dvorak on the feed here. I think his path is going to be on the mat. I think almost all of his wins have come by submission. He has a decision or two mixed in there, but Dvorak I do see as the better striker here. The question is just going to be if he can keep this fight standing for the majority of it, and if it does hit the mat, is he going to have the submission defense to kind of keep things where he needs them? I mean, we've never seen Dvorak submitted professionally, and I think that's enough for me to just take Dvorak here. Definitely not bet him at this number, but it's enough for me to side with him as the pick. But yeah, Usyk very live as a submission threat, and I think that is his path. If he could get this fight grounded early when these guys are dry, before they're sweaty, really kind of work for his submission, he definitely has a major jiu-jitsu advantage in this matchup. So where I think Dvorak's going to have the better cardio, I think he has enough of a fight IQ to mostly keep this at range and standing, where he's going to be the better striker by a decent margin. It's scary, and I definitely don't want to pay minus 250 for him here against a very, very dangerous grappler in this Usyk guy. I'm with you in that I want to spend a little bit more time digging in. Usyk fighting for Eternal MMA. I think that's where is it, New Zealand, Australia, but yeah, it's not known as a great promotion historically. So I do want to dig into kind of the level of competition he's been facing, but I do think he's the better jiu-jitsu player here. But I think everything else is in Dvorak's favor. He was also preparing for Schnell, who is a submission threat, so he was in a similar spot. Usyk taking this fight on short notice. Dvorak's certainly a better fighter than Carpenter, in my opinion. So I think while both of these guys are kind of getting each other on relative short notice, I think Dvorak is going to be the better prepared for this matchup, as his prior opponent was more similar to what he's facing here. So I'm siding with Dvorak for now. Definitely going to dig a little bit deeper. Really don't like the price. But yeah, I think the experience under the UFC banner is going to be enough for him here. And yeah, Usyk having to fly over from Australia, definitely not the easiest travel route there for him either to be making his debut. So certainly a live underdog. Don't blame me at all if you take a shot at this price, but I do think Dvorak should be able to just avoid the submissions and grind out a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's back and forth, kind of scrappy either way, but I could see him getting his hand raised that way. It may be sub or bust for Usyk, but yeah, I'm tempted. I may be going with the dog there. And the last fight to look at near Pick'em, women's strawweight, Diana Belbita taking on Maria Oliveira. Let's hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I don't have too many thoughts on this one. These are two of the lower level strawweights on the roster, both primary strikers, so it should be fun. It is actually a decent card opener. They are going to stand and trade. Belbita lands more than 6 significant strikes per minute, also absorbs more than 6. Oliveira lands more than 5, also absorbs more than 5. So they're both just going to be throwing shots and eating them probably. Don't really expect either girl to grapple much. Belbita is kind of an honorary Canadian, I guess. She trains out of the same camp as Jasmine Juzavicius and Mike Malott. She's been living in Canada most of her adult life, so I think she's on this card, and she will have some fan support if they are in the seats for the prelims. But Oliveira has looked better than I expected her to. And I don't know. I just really don't rate either of these girls all that highly. Should be a striking fight. Should mostly take place on the feet. They both put out a ton of ball volume. They both eat a ton of shots. I'll slightly side with Belbita because it's technically in her backyard, but it's not a confident play at all. This is super low level. Maybe just bet the split decision prop without even picking a side either way and get decent plus money on this. This screams split decision to me either way. But really, really tough for me to have a confident lean here.
I mean, yeah, super close striking affair, going 15 minutes. I think we do see a decision here. I know the way of Oliveira. I mean, she's lost to fared better against UFC competition, but losing to like heavy grapplers like Demopoulos and Tabitha Ricci. That's not Belbita's game. We're gonna see them strike, and I think Oliveira, while she's listed of having a 1-inch reach advantage, she fights a lot longer. I think she's going to be more effective fighter at range, and while these two are exchanging, I could see her, getting her shots through just a couple more times than Belbita's able, given her length, and perhaps grabbing the judge's eye with that as well. Belbita throws the better low kicks, like she may be able to win points that way, and to take over, just based on volume striking alone. But yeah, my side leans towards Oliveira, just picturing these two standing up, striking for 15 minutes. She's probably going to have a slight edge, but complete coin flip. Hard to say. Should be a fun opener, though.
Agreed.
And should be a fun card this weekend. UFC 289 from Canada, back in Canada. Amanda Nunes back. Charles Oliveira is back in action. Very excited. Looking forward to watching the fights with you, Nick. Thank you, as always, for joining me and breaking these down for Dine Sports.
Likewise, and once again, check out the article, everyone, on Saturday morning that will be posted on the Dine Sports Twitter. Also follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. We will definitely be enjoying these fights this weekend, and we have several weeks in a row. I think, is it 12 or 16 weeks in a row with the UFC card coming up? So tons of articles, tons of bets to win. Should be a fun summer here for combat sports fans.
Absolutely. Very excited for this summer of fights, kicking it off with a pay-per-view this weekend from Vancouver, Canada. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.